Time for another installment of Chuck's captivating chat. Seems like a few hours passed since the last time I did this live stream. It's a good place to be. I'm happy to have you all joining me. Um, it's beautiful day here in Los Angeles. Spring is starting to show its little head. It's starting to show some signs of warmer weather. Soon I will be putting on my air conditioning again. It tends to get a little crazy this time of the year because sometimes start of the week I will have my heat on, and at the end of the week I have my air conditioner on. Schizophrenic weather, not unlike some of the energy in this town. But I laugh about it. I've been here. Oh my God, this summer is going to make 39 years that I've lived in this great city, and it's a place that I love. I've never become jaded to it. I still get pangs of excitement when I'm driving through downtown Hollywood and I look up and go, oh, there's the Hollywood sign. Yeah, I still feel like a tourist in my home city here. And, you know, I hope I never lose that. I hope I never become jaded to that. I hope I always feel like a kid in a candy store, being in the middle of all of this. And that's where now I'm using this channel to tell a lot of my stories and a lot of my videos, doing these live streams. I used to worry, what am I going to talk about for half an hour? The last two shows I've done have actually gone on about an hour. Uh, it's just I get into a stream of thought. Maybe it's my ADHD. I don't know, but it's one thought comes after another. I start to tell a story, and then I'm reminded of another story to tell, and another. So I guess I should just get started here. Um, yeah, I was going to say also that I don't get nervous like I used to, which is a good sign. I find that when I start the show, hey, Pam, thank you for joining. I find that once this little light goes on and it says I'm on live, I just go to my happy place. I'm in my purpose, and there's no reason to be nervous. I told a story in one of my videos about Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue, and it was something she just recently revealed, I think a couple of months ago in an interview. She didn't even mention this in her autobiography, but she had serious cold feet on the day of her wedding. I mean, to where she almost did not go through with it. She and Phil were going to be married in her parents' home. Her father, of course, was Danny Thomas. And she was up in her room with her hairdresser and her makeup artist, and she had her outfit on. She didn't wear a traditional wedding dress, but she was all ready. And she froze. She froze in fear and could not get up. And everybody was downstairs. Phil was standing there waiting. The minister was there. She could not bring herself to leave the room. And finally, her father knocked on the door and said, "Darling, it's been about half an hour. Everybody's waiting on you." And she said, "Daddy, I always swore my whole life I was never going to get married. This was never going to be my life. And now, what am I doing? What am I doing?" And her father said, "Well, sweetheart, if you feel that way, then maybe you shouldn't go through with this." And he stayed with her. Marlo finally got up her courage, went out the door, and as she was walking down the quote unquote aisle of her parents' living room with all the guests, she saw Phil just standing there. And she said he looked like an innocent choir boy. Those were her words. And she said, "It's just Phil. What am I afraid of?" And I don't know what it is. I tell people not to send me messages or call me during my live stream. And sure enough, you probably hear the bells going ding, ding, ding. People sending me in messages right now. My manager, Debbie Brady, typed in the comments last week, "Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings." But anyway, Marlo saw Phil and she said, "What am I afraid of? It's just Phil." Hi, Debbie. And that's the realization I have when I do these live streams. Yes, a lot of bells are going off right now. Um, it's just my friends. It's just friends, family, people coming here to support me. Why should I be nervous about that? That's something to be happy about. So, anyway, I always promise something current in industry news. And I thought, well, what am I going to talk about today? And lo and behold, on the 3 o'clock local news, there was a story about um, Combs, Sean Combs, about his two homes, his home in Los Angeles and Holmby Hills area, and his home in Miami, both being raided right now. And it has to do with accusations about human trafficking. And I saw that his two sons are being detained and here in Los Angeles. So I don't know what that's about. I did my best to follow the story before going on today. But it just, so far, there's not much more being revealed. So that's all there is. Um, I don't mean to diminish the seriousness of this story by segueing this way, but I did meet Sean Combs once. Um, he was nice enough, but it was interesting. I encountered a lot of celebrities where I used to work in West Hollywood, and it was rare that I ever encountered a celebrity who was not gracious, who was rude, anything like that. I'd say 99.5% of the time they were wonderful. Well, somebody approached Sean Combs. I was waiting on him and said, "May I please take a selfie with you?" And Sean refused. "No, no, I won't do that." And then he saw the look on the person's face and he said, "Please understand something. I'm not being rude. Please understand. I just got out of the gym. I'm sweaty. I don't look good right now. And I can't take a chance on having bad pictures of me out on the internet because once I let a fan take a picture of me, it's out of my control." So he did at least explain it, but he was one of the few I've ever seen refuse an autograph or a selfie. So that was just my little Sean Combs story. But yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff coming out about Sean. Story allegations of sex trafficking, human trafficking. Perhaps I will have more information later in the day or tomorrow, and I can make a video on this or certainly talk about it more extensively next week. Um, but any respect, had a great show. My good friend Pam of Pomona remembers, and we also did it with Joyce Petrus of Mystic Soul Insights. We did a collaborative effort, our theories about what is going on with Kate Middleton and the royal family right now. And I highly advise you to watch it on Pomona Remembers. I'm very proud of it, more so for Joyce and Pam. Did a very small contribution and a very unusual thing for me. I got out the oracle cards and I did a reading. And that's something I used to be very shy about doing publicly. It's my dear friend, Dr. Whimsy Anderson, who got me, shall we say, out of the closet with that when she started putting me on her show on Tuesdays, Taco Tuesdays, where I am the Ed McMahon to her Johnny Carson. We work very well together. Whimsy and I go back to the days we worked in the health industry together. She's the one who personally trained me to get my naturopathic doctor's assistant's license. She's just been an angel to me. But anyway, she had been after me for ages to start doing things like this live on these shows. And that's what I did on Pomona Remembers for whatever it's worth. But I felt that what Pomona had to offer and what Joyce did with her astrology were the main parts of the show. And I'm very proud of it. Oh, thank you, Pam. Thank you for your compliment. I hope I did good. I did. I gave it my best. But anyway, the reason I also bring that up, I don't want to, maybe this is unfair. I just had some hit that because it was abdominal surgery for Kate and she has to begin chemotherapy, I wondered aloud, could it be something as serious as ovarian cancer? I don't know, but I was reminded of Gilda Radner. And that's the story I wanted to tell right now. I don't mean that to be a tragic tie-in, but invariably there's some tragedy. I mentioned that I've lived here almost 39 years. I came here Labor Day weekend of 1985. And it wasn't long afterwards, I was working in the health industry in Westwood Village, which is adjacent to the UCLA campus. And it was an area rich with celebrities. The first celebrity I ever met. My life out here was Sissy Spacek. And I gushed way too much about her. And she was very sweet and she put up with me, but I had to learn what is known as celebrity etiquette. You just keep the gushing to a minimum, stay to the point, be very sincere, and be brief. Not go on and on. But I used to see Gilda Radner walking around the sidewalks a lot. And of course, I grew up with her, in the 70s, Saturday Night Live. I loved Gilda Radner. There was such a purity to her comedy. She was like a joyous little girl. And I also loved her because she did one of the earliest impersonations of Lucille Ball that I've ever seen. And I loved the way she did it because she wasn't trying for a spot on impersonation, trying to get the voice right and the look. It was more of capturing the spirit of Lucille Ball. Yes, Pam just said Gilda did so much to bring awareness of women's health issues. Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna come to that actually, but um, she captured the spirit of Lucille Ball, I think, better than anyone I've ever seen do that. And there was even an episode of Saturday Night Live where Desi Arnaz hosted the real Ricky Ricardo, and he did scenes with Gilda as Lucy. And it's so charming and so sweet. And there was another time Gilda did Lucy. They did it in black and white. They had Dan Aykroyd doing his best Gail Gordon, Mr. Mooney impersonation. No, Mrs. Ricardo, and it was Lucy Ricardo working on the assembly line of a nuclear warhead factory. Yes, take off on the chocolate factory only. It was so bonbons, it was bombs, nuclear bombs on the assembly line. And of course, the assembly line speeded up, and Lucy was trying to carry all these over to the counter without dropping them. And of course, she drops one and ends up blowing up most of the world. And they cut away to a shot, very cheesy, slapsticky, where there's smoke everywhere and they're all covered in black soot and hair's all messed up and everything. And and she Lucy's there going, "Boss, does this mean I'm fired?" And the boss says, "No, Mrs. Ricardo, it just means we're going to spend many years in the basement with some canned goods." And Lucy's like, "What?" So anyway, that was Gilda, with a little bit of a twisted twist to I Love Lucy, but you can probably find that on YouTube. But anyway, I used to see Gilda Radner walking around Westwood. And of course, I recognized her. I was like, "Oh my God, that's Gilda Radner." But I didn't bother her. I was respectful enough. And she was always walking around for long periods, and I would see her every day. We had these big windows where I worked, so you had a big view of what was going on outside. And what struck me about Gilda, she seemed so sad, and she was lost. Like she was walking around like this, just looking up at the sky and walking in a daze. Like she was in another zone, and I could never figure out what was going on. I thought, "Why are you so sad, Gilda? What's wrong? What's so bad?" And then one day she came into where I worked. I'm trying to remember what she bought. I think I sold her some vitamin B6. That's so funny. I just now remember this. I sold her B6 and I was telling her how it was a natural diuretic, it could help with hormone regulation. Anyway, she was the one who had requested it. And she was very polite, nice to me, but so sad, so sad, even with me. And I even said, "I'm a big fan of yours. I just love your work. I love what you do." And she was like, "Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you," like that, and then she had to go, and that was really my only encounter with Gilda Radner, but it was it was in the following year. I think, this was in fall of '85. I think it was early, I'd have to look it up, early '86 or spring of '86. That's when it was announced that she had ovarian cancer. And I found out from reading her autobiography that she was, the time I met her, she was going to UCLA, which I told you was next to the Westwood Village. And she was seeing doctors because she couldn't understand. First of all, she was having chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms. But secondly, and most importantly, she and her husband, Gene Wilder, were trying to conceive a child. And she just couldn't understand why they were having fertility issues. And it wasn't Gene. They tested him. So she was going through a whole series of tests to find out what was going on. Hence, that's why I would see her walking around looking so lost and sad, and I guess just feeling physically low. But what I noticed about her, though, there was nothing about her that appeared to be sick. She appeared to be healthy. I just surmised that she was depressed about something. And then later I found out what was going on. It was so tragic. She was trying to have a child. The doctors misdiagnosed her. They did not find that she had ovarian cancer until it was already a massive tumor in her abdomen. And I guess that's why I immediately thought of that. And I thought of Princess Catherine. I hope I'm wrong on that. Dear God, I hope I'm wrong. But that's what they found, and Gilda, of course, had to have a radical hysterectomy. They took her ovaries out, everything. As she said in her autobiography, all that work, all I did to have a child, and there it was over. And then she had to go into intensive chemotherapy. Um, she passed away in 1989. And ironically, she was in the same hospital as Lucille Ball when Lucy was there dying. I think they were 2 floors apart or 3 floors, and Lucy had just had, major heart surgery. I think they had to do a partial heart transplant on her. Ultimately, Lucy's aorta ruptured, and that's how she died. But, Gilda was on an upper floor. Lucy was there. Gilda was as ill as she was 3 weeks away from death. But when she found out Lucille Ball was in the hospital, she was just so excited, and she sent flowers to Lucy. Never heard back, but she sent flowers down to Lucy and said from one comedian to another. And that was the story about Gilda, my experience with her. Um, she was a great lady. And I wish she were still around with us, but I consider myself so lucky that I got to share share molecules with her. There were, for a few brief moments, her universe and my universe came together, and that's how I met Gilda Radner. But tying in with Lucy, let's see, because that's always a theme for me to do a Lucy story on my show, and this is happier. My good friend Shelley Zimmerman, who is a Lucille Ball aficionado like me, did a posting today on Facebook where she was talking about how John Ritter made Lucille Ball break up on camera when she was filming her very last series, Life with Lucy. That's the sitcom. They filmed 13 episodes, but it got canceled after only 8. It was supposed to have been her triumphant return to television. And oh no, Debbie said more like a bypass. No, at the time it was reported a partial heart transplant, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary to that. But anyway, she was talking about that, how John Ritter made her break up on camera, and Lucy claimed that it had only happened 3 times before, citing the I Love Lucy episode, Break the Lease, the one where uh, Lucy and Ricky are trying to get out of their lease with Fred and Ethel by becoming the neighbors from hell, like pounding their feet on the ceiling, taking a trash can lid and taking a jackhammer to it on the floor. Finally, Ricky brings his band, his entire orchestra, to the apartment to rehearse and play at top volume at 4:30 in the morning, causing the plaster to cave in on the Mertzes down below, and they show up with a chandelier on top of their heads. And if you watch it carefully, you will see Lucy fighting not to break out laughing. You can see her biting her cheeks. And there was the episode of Van Johnson. Shelley mentioned it. I've got to look it up, but she supposedly broke up there. And there was also an episode of Here's Lucy. Gail Gordon this woman was hitting him with a purse repeatedly. And Gail ad-libbed a line, well, I'm glad she didn't have doorknobs in there. And Lucy, for some reason, thought that was really, really funny. And she could not stop laughing. But she was such a good actress. She was able to fake it enough to make it look like her character was laughing at the situation. But anyway, the reason I'm making such a big deal out of this and bringing it up is because I was there. I was there when John Ritter made Lucille Ball break up on camera. So I thought, well, this is perfect. This is going to be my story for today. I never have told the story of my one time seeing Lucille Ball in person, my idol, the time she and I breathed the same air in the room under the same roof. And it was her, of course, her sitcom, Life with Lucy. I had just moved out here. It was like May of 86. I'd been here, about 10 months or so. And it was announced in the newspaper that Lucille Ball was returning to television with a new series. I'm like, hooray, hooray. I was like jumping up and down. I was so excited. And then it occurred to me, oh, wait a minute. I live here in LA. I live here. I can get tickets. I can go see Lucy. I can go see Lucy in person. So I kept watching and watching and watching. When does it start filming? When does it start production? Then I found out late July, early August, they had started filming. So I just used every connection I had, anybody I knew who could secure tickets. And of course, I found out it's not that hard to get tickets to the filming or taping of a show here in LA. The hard part is getting in, because they always give a lot more tickets than they have available seats, because they want to ensure a full, I wouldn't say theater, whatever you want to call it, the bleachers and the sound stage. They want to ensure they have a full crowd. So there was no guarantee at all that I was going to get in. But I did get a ticket, and I left work early that day, telling people I was going to go see Lucy. And I got in the line. It was, let's see, near Formosa. I'm trying to think of the street, but it was near Formosa Street in Hollywood, the studio where they were going to film this. And it was the former Sam Goldwyn Studios. And what's interesting about that is that's where Lucille Ball, 22-year-old Lucille Ball, well, she wasn't quite 22. She was like 2 weeks shy. But yes, the calls are still coming in. Ding, ding, ding. Sorry about that. Not quite 22-year-old Lucille Ball came to Hollywood to be a chorus girl, one of the 12 Goldwyn girls. I've told this story before on this live stream, of one of the 12 chorus girls for an Eddie Cantor musical called Roman Scandals. And it was filmed at this very lot. I tried to confirm if it was the same soundstage. And I've talked to a lot of knowledgeable people, and I've done internet searches. Nobody seems to be able to Um, tell me, tell me if this was the actual soundstage. I even know a good friend of Lucille Ball's who worked as her assistant. He was there for all the shows, and I called him up and I said, "Was that the soundstage where she made go Roman scandals?" And he said, "I don't know." And he said, "Lucy, she even gave me a tour of the lot and pointed out all the things and all." And he said, "I don't recall her mentioning anything about which soundstage the movie was done on." And I thought, well, that's a shame. But anyway, that's where Lucille Ball was doing her final sitcom. She took her career full circle. That was where it began, and sadly, that's where it ended. And that's another story. I mean, I realize Lucille Ball, of course, did like some game show appearances, and I think she did a little bit on a Bob Hope special, some things like that. But basically, that's where her acting career ended. It began and ended right there on that lot. So anyway, that's where they were filming Life with Lucy. And I see Debbie said she was diagnosed with a dissecting aortic aneurysm and underwent a 7-hour surgery to repair her aorta and successfully install an aortic valve replacement. That must be why the press at the time called it a partial heart transplant. That must be where that comes from. And of course, we know that Lucy died of a ruptured aorta. So, you know, it was her time. But I understand the doctors fought valiantly to save her life. I mean, they knew this was like the most loved woman on the planet Earth, and they had to just do anything to save her. I've even read that maybe someone else, they would not have taken such, shall we say, heroic means, such as doing a partial transplant and things on a 77-year-old woman to try to save her life. But it was Lucy. So anyway, getting back, this was where she was doing her final sitcom, and I got in a very, very long line on the sidewalk. And this was, I'm trying to remember, this may have been an hour and a half, 2 hours before they were even going to start letting people in. And even then, it was questionable if I was going to get in. And yes, I'm going to admit, I was like, please, God, please let me in. Please, I promise I'll be good. Those things where we plead bargain with God. Yes, I was saying little prayers to myself. And I remember standing in that line like it was yesterday. And I remember just almost like trembling, shaking like a leaf, like, oh my God. Because I've been a fan of Lucille Ball since I was 2 years old. And I had been waiting for this for a long, long time, and anyway, I made the cut. They let me in. So I get in. They let us onto the soundstage. And I see all the audience bleachers. I had only been out here a few months, so I had never attended a filming or a taping before. This was a whole new experience for me. So there I come in, I knew it was going to be this way, but I saw they do the sets side by side for a sitcom done before an audience. In this case, there were 3 sets. There was the hardware store where she and Gail Gordon, their characters, worked. They owned a business. And then the center part was the living room of the house where they lived in. The third part, they had these makeshift curtains covering it because they wanted to surprise the audience for what was coming up at the end. So that's all we got to see. So I get in there and I looked at my watch and I thought, there's still like an hour to go. So they just wanted to make sure everybody was seated and in their places. And I'm sitting there and I couldn't help myself. I was just like I said, I often have felt like a little boy in a candy store when I'm in LA. And this was like the ultimate candy store. I was they're just sitting there shaking and trembling, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Am I going to see Lucy? Am I going to see Lucy? I'm going to see her work. And I thought, what an honor this is. I'm going to get to watch her work. I'm going to get to watch her act. I'm going to get to watch her in front of the cameras. And after a long, long wait, her husband, Gary Morton, came out to do the audience warm up. And any of you who have ever gone to a filming or a taping of a show will know, uh, this is where you earn your ticket. They make you work. They want to get you all worked up. They want you laughing. They want you prepared to do your job. And our job in the audience is to provide the laughter and the applause and the reactions. So that was Gary Morton's job. Gary Morton, her husband, used to be a stand-up comic in the Catskills. When he met Lucy back in 1961, I think it was when she was on Broadway doing the musical Wildcat. He claimed to the press that he had never watched I Love Lucy. He claimed that because he was always doing stand-up gigs at night and never had time for that, and claimed he hardly knew who Lucille Ball was. Yeah, right. But anyway, that's the story he always gave. Of course, Lucy always gave the story that he was only 6 years younger than her. Turns out, after his death, it was revealed he was 15 years younger than her. Lucy was quite the cougar. Good for you, Lucy. But anyway, Gary Morton came out, did the audience warm up, and he did a few introductions. But the one that I remember was Mary Wicks. And if you know who that is, she was a wonderful character actress who was on all of Lucille Ball's shows, except for the last one. The show ended too soon, but she was on I Love Lucy very famously as the ballet instructor. Remember the one where Lucy had to lift her leg up to the bar, and there's the ballet teacher going, Abba, 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 with the stick in her hand. Madame Ricardo, you have great talent. That was Mary Wicks. And she worked a lot on the Lucy show. Here's Lucy. She was in the audience, and she stood up to take a bow. Now, this is what Gary Morton said. He claimed that Mary Wicks never missed a filming of any of Lucille Ball's shows. Now, I have later talked to some other people who are Lucy aficionados who know their stuff and say, oh, no, that's not true. She wasn't there for everyone. So, but I would say it's safe to say she made quite a few. And certainly she was a very dear friend of Lucy. So she was there in the audience. And let's see, Gary said, well, he introduced the cast members one by one, and of course brought out Gail Gordon last, the great Gail Gordon. You know, had been Mr. Mooney, Uncle Harry. He even did some I Love Lucy's, Mr. Littlefield, the owner of the Tropicana nightclub. And many don't know this, but Lucille Ball, almost her entire broadcast history, going back to the early days of radio, included Gail Gordon. Her first radio show, it was called The Wonder Show with Jack Haley, who played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. He had a half-hour comedy variety radio show weekly, and Lucille Ball was a regular on there. Gail Gordon was the announcer on the show. So they, even as early as 1938, Lucy and Gail were working together. Flash forward 10 years when Lucy was doing her series, My Favorite Husband, which was the radio series that became the basis for I Love Lucy. Gail Gordon was one of the regular cast members of the show. So their history went way, way back. And here it was all these years later, something like 48 years later, still working together. And Gail Gordon is brought out to we just all gave him a big standing ovation. And he was 80 years old at the time, still had so much energy and vitality. And he was just so happy to be there. I could see he just was thrilled to be working again and be working with Lucy. And Ruth Buzzy had a small part. Gary Morton introduced her, brought her out. I thought it was intriguing because she had actually been a guest star on Here's Lucy many years earlier, and now she was playing just a little tiny bit. But I guess she was just so excited to be working with Lucy that she was going to take anything she could get. And then, and I got to remember this, I think Gary said we have a very special guest star tonight, Mr. John Ritter. No, oh my God. Everyone went crazy. And I thought, oh my God, John Ritter and Lucy? Yes. But he said, we're not going to bring him out right now. And he said, and Lucy's not going to come out now. because we want you to welcome her when she's on camera, which is basically a cue for everybody to just go crazy, when she came out. So there was all of this anticipation. And oh, yes, the other thing Gary said to us, now this show is done on film and not tape. So we don't have monitors. I apologize, you can't watch on the monitors, but hopefully you can see everything going on. Enjoy the show. So the lights came down, lights came up on the set. I'm like, literally, I'm just so excited. And the director calls for action. They have the clapboard, and in walks Lucy, and the audience. So I just say it went apeshit. The audience, I mean, just cheering. It was thunderous. People were stamping their feet, and just the applause went on and on and on. And Lucy was doing this little bit. She walks in, and she picked up a spatula off the counter, and she was fixing her hair like if she was looking in a mirror, and she milked it a little bit. I think they had to edit it down a little in the final print of the show, but it was quite something when she walked out there. And she did some banter with Gail Gordon, and the audience, we were so thrilled that the laughter just was enormous, and there was applause after her lines. And I later realized when I watched the show, this was not doing the show or Lucy a favor, because it worked if you were watching it like a stage play. If theater is big, it's over the top. Our reactions from the audience were big and over the top, and it felt fine when we were watching it. But when I watched it on television, it just seemed so out of proportion. It was too much, to the point where it looked like it was like artificial canned laughter and canned applause, and it felt really forced and fake. But I was there. I can tell you, it was real. They did not fake any of the laughs. It was all real. And I watched that episode now, and I know my laughter is part of that laughter there. So anyway, she did some banter with Gail Gordon, and then it's in the hardware store. In comes John Ritter. I think he was looking for a doorknob or something. It was something like a door handle, a doorknob or something. And of course, the audience went crazy again, and the applause and the cheering and everything. And I thought, my God, it's the old guard and the young guard together, because John Ritter in many ways was like the young male Lucille Ball of his time. So it was really exciting to see them work together, to see their chemistry. And Lucy, at the age of 75, was still doing comedy, physical comedy. She was climbing up and down ladders and just jumping around, and with this energy. I think it just gave Lucy such joy to be back in front of an audience, in front of the cameras, that 30 years disappeared off of her. She was a young woman. You know, I was thinking of that line of Shelley Winters in the Poseidon Adventure. In the water, I'm a very skinny woman. Well, Lucy, on a soundstage and from an audience, she was in her arena. She was where she was supposed to be. So it went really well. I got, they filmed it all in one continuous take. I must have been like a 10-minute sequence. And that's very true to form to the way Lucille Ball worked, going back to I Love Lucy. Sometimes sitcoms can go on for like 5-6 hours or well into the night, doing retake after retake. Lucy was always very budget conscious, and she was very much about rehearsing it till it was perfect and it was on its feet, and they could just film it straight through in one take. They rarely did retakes, which comes to what I'm getting to here. Um, it was because they were doing all this physical shtick in the hardware store. John Ritter, his character, he was playing himself, but John Ritter, playing the character John Ritter, got injured. And Lucy's, oh, come home with me, Mr. Ritter, and I'll get you all bandaged up and fixed up and everything. And so they do more physical shtick, where she brings him a lunch. And I'm trying to remember, for some reason, he didn't want to eat it. It was some kind of health food concoction. So Lucy was force feeding him, and something happened that made Lucy break up laughing. So this is going back full circle to what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. Hence the fourth time Lucy ever broke up in front of an audience, and I was there to see it. She broke up laughing. The scene was, they thought, ruined, which, woo, pissed off Lucy. Ooh, I could just see she was not happy about that and a little mad at herself for breaking up. And the director came onto the set, and there were two or three other crew members, and we couldn't hear what they were saying, but they were bantering away, having a big discussion over whether they could salvage the scene or not, if they had to retake it. They obviously decided not to retake the scene. And at that point, Lucy, the only time she broke the fourth wall and turned to the audience, she turned to us and said, "I want you to know that only 3 times before has someone ever made me do that, break up laughing." And she said it almost seriously. So I thought, "Oh, wow, I feel privileged. I got to witness that." And of course, the third set, they pulled the curtain, and there was this thing where John Ritter was doing a play at the Pasadena Playhouse. And guess what? The leading lady was ill and could not go on. And the director comes up to John Ritter and says, "Well, I'm wondering who we can get to take her place." And of course, the studio audience was like, "Oh," because we all knew. How many times was that premise used on a Lucy show? And Lucy's like, "Oh, Mr. Ritter." And of course, they do this wonderful bit where they're doing this schlocky play on stage, and Lucy is sabotaging it, and everything goes wrong, and it's hysterical. And then John Ritter swallows a harmonica, and she pokes his chest, and little musical notes come out of his mouth. Anyway, that was my experience seeing Lucille Ball in person, watching a filming of the show. Oh, yes, I did shake hands with Gary Morton during a break in filming. And I asked him, "Well, is Lucy going to come out? Is she going to talk to us? Is she going to sign autographs?" And he said, "No, no, give us your address. We'll send you a picture." So anyway, that was as close as I ever came to seeing Lucille Ball in person. That's my happy little story. I think I got this all in under 45 minutes. I haven't even looked to see if there are any comments here. Wait, what's this? Debbie said it started out as live TV, which I think you've talked about making into a recorded series. Debbie, you'll have to explain that to me later. Let's see. His son is, oh, yes, John Ritter's son is quite talented. I have seen him work. I think he had his own show for a while. It only lasted about a season. I'm just looking to see if anybody else said anything else here before I go. It's very hard for me to talk and read the comments at the same time here, but I think I mentioned everything. And I think what I'm going to do, rather than let this drag on to an hour, I'm going to stop now while I'm ahead of the game at the 45-minute mark. And just thank you so much for joining me today. It means so very much to me. I love you all. I love all the beautiful comments that I have been receiving. Please know how much that encourages me and makes me want to just keep going forward with this and just giving you the best that I can possibly give you. My cat, Sasha, has her own channel, Sasha's Siamese Secrets. Please like and subscribe. And for me, please like and subscribe Chuck's Captivating Chronicles. So thank you all so much for being here. And I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I'll see you next Monday.